Hugh, it's Ryan. Hey, just with Christian O'Connell coming on the podcast today, because he hosts breakfast radio like every morning, and that's his world, you're probably thinking that you should bring up the fact that I won Best Newcomer on air when I was on radio like 12 years ago, because that's probably something that he'd be interested in, and you want to find common ground. And I totally get it. Like, good instinct to bring that up, and it would be factually correct. Like, technically, I did win that award when I was doing radio, but I don't know. Having thought it through, I just think this is Christian's episode. It's his story, and it's a really important story, and I love what he talks about. So bringing my accolades into it and going into that whole thing about the fact that I was like, celebrated but weirdly undervalued when I was on radio. I don't know. I just feel like it's maybe for another time. So anyway, just thought I'd just drop that in case you wanted to talk about it. But I'll see you soon for the podcast. It's Ryan, by the way, Shelton from the Imperfects. You know me.
To call back, press 2 to replay message, press 1 to reply.
We're all imperfect, and on this podcast, I'll be chatting with a variety of interesting people who are willing to make themselves vulnerable by sharing their own struggles and imperfections.
Then we'll discuss the invaluable takeaways we can all apply to our own imperfect lives.
I'm Hugh Van Kylenberg from the Resilience Project.
And I'm Ryan Shelton from my mum. And this is The Imperfects.
Welcome back, everyone. Keen listeners of our podcast, The Imperfects, will know now that this is every 2 weeks we have an episode coming out.
Yeah.
So
every 2 weeks.
Yeah. So we're back again for our...
The fortnightly release, as it's sometimes known as. The way you started that before it was very inspired by like the 12th Man. Yeah. Like very like, welcome back.
It sure was.
Welcome back to The Imperfects.
Starting the batting is Hugh, Ryan and Josh.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you use a cricket reference because I can't look at you right now and not think of Ricky Ponting in 1998 with your goatee.
Yeah, well, for anyone who, if we release this video, we're filming this, I do have quite a rude kind of goatee beard thing happening at the moment.
Very Warwick Todd.
It is.
Oh, it is Warwick Todd as well, yeah.
I mean, it's Stuart Law, it's Greg Blewett, it's anyone who played cricket in the late 90s.
It's a thick David Brent, I'd say, a thicker David Brent. No, I'm acting in a show. No big deal. Stop asking me questions about it. I'm acting in a show, and it's for the role. I'm playing a bikie typecast again. So that's the explanation for the beard.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I think it looks really nice. Like your little goatee.
Goatee?
like what is that in the office? I like your little beard.
What's that from? Oh, from Office?
Yeah. I like your little beard.
Oh, yes. Correct.
Anyway, we'll cut that bit out.
Definitely. I hate people to think I don't know every line from The Office.
So we've actually both come to the table today with something. Like usually when we start this chat, it's just we'll just say, oh, well, let's just start talking. We'll get into the interview. But we both actually turned up today and said, I've got something to say before we get into the interview. And we've never done that before. So do you want to go first? Do you want to say your thing first?
It's quick. I just want to share something with you. It was a few weeks ago, and I got first of all, a bit of context. So for those of you who if you haven't the Apple AirPods Pro, you know the AirPods Pro?
Yeah.
I know you've had several pairs, Hugh. Or is that the Beats?
I've got the equivalent in Beats. It's Power, what are they called?
Power Beats.
Yeah, and our dog Vance. He likes them more than he likes food. Well, he thinks they are food.
They've got great sound. What does he listen to?
He's eaten 3 pairs.
Imagine seeing Vance walk past with the Beats the over the top of the ear.
Every time people hear his name's Vance, I feel like I need to say that we didn't name him. I don't know why. I feel like
because Vance Joy.
I like Vance. I don't know what it is. We didn't name him. I just want people to know that. But he's called Vance.
Who would be? I mean, Bag of Vance and Vance Joy. Any other famous Vances?
Well, we were thinking about changing his name to something like Vance.
Yeah.
And I was thinking Lance. Just
why? Because it has to rhyme. Because he'll respond.
Yeah, because he was a year old when we got him.
Yeah. Okay.
Failed.
How about like instead of Vance, just Vans?
The shoes.
The shoes. Like Vans.
Vans.
Vans. His name's Vans. Okay, so no, so a couple of weeks ago, I had my AirPods Pro in, and I was I hate talking about the fact that I'm mowing my grass on a ride-on mower, but I do. I have a ride-on mower, and I had the AirPods Pro, and I was listening to something. And a feature of the AirPods Pro is when you get a text message, it automatically, like the Siri voice, reads out the text message to you.
Right.
So I was listening to a podcast, and then a message came in, and it was from a friend of mine, Sam, who was and he works on Will Anderson's podcast,
right.
Willosophy. Right?
Yeah.
And so he was messaging me. I'm going to find the message. So it's like, so it goes, doo-doo. Hey, mate, would love to invite you on as a guest on Willosophy. Could you please connect? And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I'm being asked on Willosophy. That's pretty cool. Like I was excited
awesome.
about that. I was like, that's great. So I was like, it had this little buzz going, and I was like, oh, Jesus, this is good. You know, and stopped the mower, pulled out the phone to read it again to reply, and realized that it's like, oh, hey, it's actually, hey, mate, would love to invite Hugh on as a guest on Willosophy. Could you please connect? And it's like, oh, yep. So not me. Hugh does sound like you when said by Siri, unfortunately. So I did connect you guys, and congratulations, you're going on Willosophy. Hugh.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, so Hugh Van Carlenberg, soon on Willosophy.
Well, I'm disappointed, but as soon as you said that, I thought, that'd be such a funny chat. I'd love to listen to you on Willosophy so much.
Sorry, did you say Hugh or you?
You.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I would
love to listen to Hugh on Willosophy. Well, we've established that you're going to be on, so don't need to rub it in.
Oh, dear. Well, no, I would love it to be you, but
it's not.
Yeah.
But tough shit.
Very good. So I wanted to say, and I think we've got the timer going for this pre-chat for a reason. And this is what I wanted to bring to the table. So we talked about this Missy Higgins episode. Missy said to me once, don't ever read reviews on book on anything.
So this is referencing the last episode we did in the Vulnerability House. Missy Higgins came on.
Yeah, Missy Higgins talked about how she knows she shouldn't read reviews of her work. And so I've just had that steadfast rule since my book came out, and I've applied it to the podcast. Yeah. But something about hearing her say that, I was like, I'm a little bit interested to know what people say about the podcast. I feel like I saw it had a 5 rating. I was like, that must be nice stuff there.
What an interesting interpretation from her saying, don't read reviews. Oh, okay. I heard you say reviews. Maybe I will just read the ones later.
Anyway, and for everyone there's some really lovely comments on their reviews, and thank you to everyone who does that. It's very nice. And I think on most podcast people say, please leave a review and do a 5-star, give us a rating or whatever. We don't do that just because, I don't know, I feel weird saying that. Asking people to do it feels like a strange thing to do to me. But and so, but I just wanted to for everyone who's written lovely comments and given us ratings, apparently it helps a lot with a whole lot of things. So
you're now doing the thing that we just said we're not going to do.
Well, I'm just thanking people. I'm not saying do it.
It's a roundabout way, though,
I'm not,
isn't it?
I'm just, okay, well
yes, I'm not going to say comment, but I'm just going to say it does help a lot. So for you to not comment now is to actively not help us.
Anyway, I just want to read out.
Smooth Van Carlenberg.
I just wanted to read out one comment, which I laughed a lot, and then I got hurt by it, and then I laughed a lot again. So here's the comment. So it said, the comment was, or the review was, enjoy the interviews, but seriously, the chat before the interview is way too long. In fact, the preview chat are like birthing pains. Have the baby already.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if this person's had a baby before. I watched Penny had a baby twice. It is
similar to our intro?
Well, if it is, we've got serious problems because it's the worst pain you could ever know. So, I mean, if this lady has had a baby, then our pre-chats are terrible. Like they're awful. So,
but that's only one comment.
Yeah, true, but it's
and we do go on a bit sometimes. Like, let's be honest.
Okay, so should we get into the interview now?
Well, yes, we should. Basically, off the back of that bit of feedback,
birthing pains.
Well, today's guest, it's a classic episode today. Just your classic interview. Hugh and Josh now face to face with Christian O'Connell. So Christian O'Connell, for those unaware, from England, now hosts the breakfast radio show on Gold FM in Melbourne. Lovely, lovely guy. He was a huge, or still is, but was like a huge radio star in the UK. He was on a station called Absolute Radio on across the whole country, #1 show, and 3 years ago decided to leave that and come to Australia, bring his whole family over, and try and start from the bottom, really. No one knew who he was. Start from the bottom and try and get back to the top. And he's written a book.
Yeah, and he was. In fact, I don't want to give away any more. Just, I think the only thing to say to everyone is that Josh did it again.
Oh,
Josh did it again.
Didn't he?
Josh came in at the end with. So we got a lot of feedback on Josh's questions for Jamila Rizvi. People saying that was just Josh just really took that interview to the next level, which he did. And I felt like when I was interviewing Jamila, she was like, "Yep," I had an answer for all the questions. But when Josh asked her a question, she kind of paused for quite a while, and her body language shifted and her posture shifted. And Josh, you did the exact same thing to Christian in that he answered every time I asked a question, bang, here's his answer straight away.
He's a professional broadcaster.
Yeah. And then Josh asked him the question right near the end of the interview, and it just stopped him, and he didn't have an answer. He said, "I've never actually thought about that." And I was like, Josh has done it again.
Yeah.
Hey,
Christian, you just got joshed. Josh, if you get asked on philosophy before me, I am going to be furious. It's going to happen. I can tell already. I can see it happening. Anyway, we will stop giving you birthing pains and going on, and we'll get to the interview. So this is Christian, unless there's anything else you wanted to say.
No, all good. Okay. We're good.
This is Christian O'Connell, one-on-one with Hugh Van Cuylenberg and question asker of the year, John Van Cuylenberg.
Can I be a fascination?
Sorry, before we start this interview, just a quick heads up. Christian O'Connell is about to talk about his experiences of panic attacks, and directly after the interview, Josh will go into pretty explicit detail of his experiences with panic attacks. So if that is triggering to you or raw to you, just a heads up, that is coming throughout this episode. Christian O'Connell, thank you so much for joining us for a chat. Now, a lot of people will know who you are. This is such a strange way to start this chat, but can you talk to us about your level of success over in the UK? Just for people who don't understand.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's a weird thing to say, can you please talk yourself up? But you are huge in the UK. You were huge in the UK, #1 for a long time, Drive Radio. Talk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in radio, breakfast radio, for 23 years. And so the last radio show I did in the UK went round all of the UK. It was a national show, and we had 3 million listeners. And I did that for 12 years, and it was the #1 show there. And then something happened in my life about 7 or 8 years ago, and it changed everything. And for a while, in really awful ways. And this is what, it's like to live a life. But then learning and growing through it and getting help, it made me realise I was in my mid-40s, and it was I don't like the phrase midlife crisis, but it was like sometimes you wake up in your own life and you drifted a bit, and I realised that I wanted more. I didn't want it to be like all the exciting stuff in my life had already happened, and you're in your mid-40s, so we're just waiting for death or just hanging on to stuff, and that's not a great way to enjoy life. It's not a great way to enjoy life with my kids, and so my wife and I had always loved Australia, and so I got the idea of like, could that be a thing? Could I go to Australia and almost start again as an unknown? How exciting would that be? And the answer was the first year, not exciting, just relentlessly difficult, and a baptism of fire is an overused word, but it was like a hell year. They hated me. They were like, no, don't the idea of an Englishman in the morning. No, go home. It was people at the end of the first week. I got an email saying that I was uninvited. No one invited me here, and I got it. I was like really seismic change, but I was also building something, a radio show that I felt was different and had a value. And at least it was just choice. But for that first year, it didn't look like this would not be a long-term thing here, that I'd just be sacked.
Yeah. Well, so I read your book and I love it.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you very much.
It's a beautiful book. And when I read the book, I was thinking, my gosh, Christian is so perfect for our podcast, because the original premise.
Because I'm a mess.
Well, no, because
be honest.
Because the premise of the podcast is we see people's lives from the outside and we think, gosh, imagine your life was like that. You'd just be so happy. I mean, your show was broadcast to 2 million listeners over in the UK every single morning. You're number one. You look at that and think, well, this guy's flying.
Yeah.
So just to go back to UK for a minute, when you're over there, what was happening under the surface for you?
Well, I had about 7 or 8 years ago, I never got nervous before doing live radio, and I'd done stand-up and TV, never had any kind of anxiety or nerves around that. Nervy sometimes, but never about my radio show. And it was live for 4 hours a day. And then out of nowhere, I started to get these things that I now know are called panic attacks, and they are, if anyone's experienced them, they're terrifying. They're called an attack for a reason. You literally think you're going to die. And what made it even more, I guess, pronounced for me it was like 15 to 20 minutes before going live to a couple of million people.
Oh, my gosh.
And so it was so bad, I would literally turn up to the radio station, a job I loved. It was my thing of joy in my life. Couldn't do it, and I'd have to walk out. I'd just have to blame that wasn't
so this is like at 5:30 in the morning?
Yeah,
or?
Before the show going live at 6. I would just have to make an excuse, like, I'm not feeling well, I feel sick, I need to go. And it kept happening like day after day, and I was like, I think I'm losing my mind. And it was terrifying. My wife said, look, you need to get help. And she said, well, if you can't do live work anymore, maybe you can choose something else. I was like, this is the only thing I've ever been slightly good at.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, you often talked about how you would have loved to have been a hairdresser. I went, yeah, but that's something after a couple of beers. It's not like I'm suddenly going to be an apprentice at 45. I'm washing hair at basis when I trained for 5 years to be a hairdresser. That's not actually a thing. It's not like when Daniel Day-Lewis quit acting to go on men's shoes in Southern Ireland. I said, that's right for him. He's got money in the bank. I haven't. I've got a mortgage to pay. And my kids were that age where you still want to be, or I thought I did at the time, superhuman to them.
Yeah.
And so it was awful. That, it's like when men are threatened with a loss of identity, and their role, and a kind of identity I built up for myself as that DJ and that provider. And when that was all really being threatened, it was a really scary time. But the best thing I did was I went and got help, and it changed my life.
Yeah.
And then it got me back on my feet. I learned some new skills. I managed to go back to live radio. And that's when I thought, do you know what? I need a new challenge. I've lost my mojo. That's what's really happening. And sometimes there's a real gift in anxiety and those panic attacks. They come with a lesson for people. And I didn't know that at the time. And I wouldn't wish them on anyone. But if you ask me now, if I could erase that from my life, I'd say no way, because if there's no that, I'm not here in Australia. And I've not been here for 3 years having this wonderful second act to my life. But what I hadn't done is I never spoke to anyone about those panic attacks. Mum, dad, friends.
Yeah.
None.
So this interests me. What anxiety levels in Australia around the world are through the roof.
They are, yeah.
They are through the roof. And I think not many people will talk about their anxiety, but then very few people then actually talk about the panic attacks. I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, sure.
Well, first of all, do you remember the first one you had, and was it the most confusing? Did you know what was going on? And then, but I also want to know what it's like, what happens to you physically when you're having the panic attack. And then to put on top of that, you're having it just before you go on air to 2 million people. I can't even begin to imagine that.
Yeah, there was that, because I was literally looking up at a clock thinking, is this going to pass? 'Cause sometimes if you've just been unwell or you have food poisoning, you can have that a racing heart and all that, and you realize, oh God, this is awful, what's this? But I'm ill. I think there's something wrong with my stomach. This, I really thought, what the hell is happening? Why? And it felt really cruel to me, like, why now in my life?
Yeah.
Why am I getting this now? I've never had it before. Why is this being taken away from me, my thing that I love to do? And then I just felt really weak and ashamed in front of my wife. I felt it was just hard.
Really?
Yeah, and even though she was great, she said, we're going to sell the house. Let's just rent somewhere really small so it takes the pressure off you for a couple of years while you work out what you can do, which the best thing I could hear, but it's still part of me was like, no, that's giving in. That's weakness. But it was what I also, part of me needed to hear. It was just at the time I stood in this, I think when, I can only speak for me, I think a lot of men have this very critical voice in their head that you're not enough. It's like at birth, you've been entered into some competition to prove yourself as the ultimate man. And there's no end prize apart from death. It's just relentless testing and trying to prove yourself. And you realise, actually, who set these rules? Why are we like this? And when men have tough times, the saddest thing you hear about it is other men going, I had no idea. And, I say it in the book, and it was true in my life. It's like, with what can happen to me, it's the silence that's the really sad thing. It's not being able to even admit to yourself, hey, you're really struggling, and that's okay. It's human.
Yeah.
What's inhuman is not asking for help. And so getting help was the best thing I did. But in terms of physically what would happen to me, it was literally like, I guess I can only liken it to having some kind of heart attack. I thought,
Really?
I'm going to explode. I thought the only way to survive this was I need to get out of whatever this suddenly is to me, is danger, this radio station. I'd never had that in my life, and so I had to just remove myself from it, and then it would slow down.
Is it like you feel a pain in your chest? Is that right?
It was a very physical thing. And then what happens is, I guess your body now, it's a very physical thing what happens. I've had to become like an expert on the amygdala and how it works.
Yeah.
It's a very understandable, it's chemicals. It's a scared ancient part of your brain firing, going, you are in danger. And so at the time I didn't know any of this. It felt like my life as I knew it was over. And when anyone's felt like that, what's more terrifying than that? How are you meant to go, oh, that's all right. Yeah, I can cope with this. You're like, oh, this is the end of me. And that's really hard to be in that place.
So and do you remember the first one by any chance?
Yeah, it was a Monday. And I couldn't work out. I was just confused, like, why is this happening to me? How is it happening to me? I think I'm having a heart attack. Or what my real fear was, is this what madness is? Am I going mad now? I will never be the same dad again. I won't be the same husband again. You feel alone and you feel broken. Like, oh my God, I can't mend myself. I think that was a really scary thing. I can't steady myself down. There's nothing I can do other than get out of this building.
Did you tell the people? I'm just interested in that moment.
No,
so did you tell the people?
I said I had a stomach bug.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just needed, and that kept happening for like a week or two, and then it was very clear I actually really need to get help. I don't know what's happening here. I thank God I did. But even that, I remember that going to see this therapist I found for the first time. You just walk in there. I was just so angry, and I feel ashamed saying this, but in my head I was going, why are you here? Therapy's a fuck up. You're not a fuck up. You've got a big radio show. You've got a nice house. Yeah. You've got a wife. You've got daughters. You've made it.
Yeah.
Why are you here? You've fucked up. And all of that was going in there. And I remember
in a shed.
It was a posh shed, this guy that I saw, but it was a shed at the bottom of his garden. I mean, I presume he actually was a therapist because I never saw any official documentation. I'm a very naive, trusting man.
Just saw a lot of tools.
There were, lawnmowers. Is this what they normally do? Like you mow out your demons? I don't know. Just go with it. And I remember just sitting opposite him and I just said to him, I don't want to be here and I don't know why I'm here. And now look back, he smiled with a twinkle in his eye like, here we go, another guy who doesn't want to be here. And he was amazing. He was exactly
How'd you
what I
find
needed.
him? Because this is a big thing for people.
Google.
Really?
It's really hard. There's no Yelp for therapists. You can't put in your mate's WhatsApp group, hey guys, I hope you're having a good Friday. What's a good therapist you guys know of? When your other one, you're just saying, what's a good pizza takeaway? Yeah. They're going, that must have been a really bad takeaway. He's now moving on to therapy. So finding it, because everyone normally, if you're trying to look for someone like a physiotherapist or chiropractor, you would say to your friends, hey guys, anyone know of someone? And so you're just going off, and then I felt like it was like some sort of app. I was like looking at photos going, that guy looks like my old PE teacher. I'm not sitting opposite him. And I saw a twinkly-eyed old man who looked quite nice, like he could have been an out-of-work Santa Claus. And so I thought, well, I'll start there. So I gave him a go, and he was great.
And how, so had you told your wife at this point that you were going to find a therapist? Or was this, were you doing, okay. And she was the only one who knew?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you feel after the first session? Did we thinking this is a good thing, or I'm not fucking coming back here?
Right, and then it was the end of the session, and he went, "Let's leave it there." And I remember walking out there, right, dry my eyes, thinking, "Let's leave it there."
What a cliffhanger!
I'm in a worse way than when I wasn't crying when I came in, and I've just had to give you some money. How is this gonna work? I just leave it there. That's inhuman. You can't just leave me like this, and so. Yeah, there was a lot of that to begin with, where I was like, how is this? I kept saying to him, look, this is all great. How's it? I just need help. I remember saying to him, I just want it cut out. I
Yeah.
hated that part of me. And he was like, wow. And he went, if I could do that, where is it then? And I'll cut it out. And I went, I don't know, that's for you to work out, but I need it removed. And then over time, you realise that attitudes towards and treating yourself like an it, and the fear as an it, is actually part of the problem. You need to understand there's a part of you, not all of you, there's a part of you that is struggling, and that part that's struggling needs your love and support and acceptance. Then, very quickly, you'll start to find your way back to yourself.
So did he give you a diagnosis at all of like, this is an anxiety disorder, or did you just talk through the symptoms and then?
No, he was very good at, I think that would have just turned me off.
Yeah.
That kind of scientific language.
Yeah.
Then it's like there's part of that scared mindset that I was in then would have gone, that doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
Whereas he started talking about, life and acceptance and sort of saying there's different parts to us. Okay, and there's a part of you that is struggling and it needs to speak out. It's got something to say to you. And once you can find what that is, then it goes, your life will change again. You won't just be back to where you were. You'll be in a better place. I couldn't understand that at the time. But now sitting with you guys, having this conversation, and I've been living in Australia for 3 years, and doing radio here, and writing a book where, for the first time ever, I've actually talked about having anxiety and panic attacks. My mum and dad only found out 2 days ago when they read the book.
Really?
Yeah.
And how was that conversation?
It was amazing. Because they were, it's like if your parents, you just, even though when do you ever stop worrying about your kids? I hope you think by the time your son's 48, and then suddenly he's written this book and you're like, wow, when does it end? I thought he was all right. Now he's telling, the book's out, here in Australia and out in the UK, now he's telling everyone, what's this about a bin? They were just, it was actually really nice. It was like, I had a really loving conversation. I guess if you show your parents as an adult, you're okay. I'm okay. There's kind of like not any room for them to still be your parent. Actually, what's really nice over the weekend, they're like, oh my God, that must have been really hard. And I'm so proud of you, got out and in, and you've done all of this. So it was amazing.
So did you send them the book and say, just read this, or did you talk them through it?
You know what's up with your parents, right? You try sometimes and have a conversation you want to have. They're just like, they're not there. And it's hard. My conversation with my parents are on Skype right now, right? And, that still takes 20 minutes of that. It's just getting the camera facing the right way. I've tried, right? Many times say, hey, listen, in this book, there's this stuff like, hello, can you hear me? And I'm like, they're in the book. You just need to know there's some stuff about a very tough time. Yes, it must have been very hard moving to Australia. I went, no, like a couple of years ago, and right, yes. Well, we'll just read the book, and then they got the book, and we had. I would have to say, actually, what was really nice about it, we probably had one of our, I guess, most emotionally honest conversations in decades. What a lovely thing!
Did it feel great afterwards?
Yeah, it was like everything I feared that they'd be like, oh, why did you say this? There's even a line in there. My dad used to always say, never trust strangers with secrets, son. And I put that in, he must have been so filthy. He was like, oh, he's actually putting this in and I'm reading it. That takes some balls, son. You're grounded. But that judgment I was fearing, I think, if I'm really honest, even from my dad, there was none of that.
Really?
None of that. No. And the amazing thing is, the book's been out 2 weeks. And my wife kept saying throughout the whole process, don't put the bit about the anxiety and panic attacks in. You won't like having to talk about it again. It was a really dark, and that's just not. She's not even mean. She was just as a protector. Yeah. She was saying, why do you want to go back into, the worst time you've ever had? I said, if I don't tell that bit, and it's not like it's the whole book. You've read the book. It's probably, I don't know, 5 or 10% of it. But if I don't tell that part of the story, I'm not interested in writing the rest of the book. And I didn't understand why until the book came out. And the last 2 weeks, every day, I'm getting 30 to 50 emails a day, right, from people who are going, oh, thank you, this is what happened to me. And I'm like, I had no idea. I'd actually started to get really scared of the book coming out. I was like, why have you done this? And my wife going, told you so, I tried to tell you. And I was actually dreading it come out. Like, people aren't going to like this part of me. You know, people in Australia are going to go, you big sook, what is it, he's English, and there's all this stuff in there. Why is he depressing us? And again, that what it's actually showing me, and what a great thing to show to my teenage daughter as well, though, I'm living what it's like the other side of the fear of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. And the emails from guys, and that's what I was most scared of. Women always seem a lot more emotionally accepting of all parts of themselves and their friends. I don't know about you, but my wife can ring her friend in tears immediately. 5 minutes later, they're screaming with laughter. I'm like, how do you do that in 5 minutes? That might take 10 beers to get anywhere near it with my friends. And then you don't remember the next morning what you talked about. I think he's having some tough times. And I was like, how do you get to that? And so I was just so dreading like what men would think about this. And all I've got is these incredible heartbreaking emails from guys who've been through some very tough times, have grown through it their own way, or a lot of them saying, what did you do? What have you learned? Can you tell me a bit more on that? I have to be honest, right? I'm struggling to understand now that I've started something in my own little way. What else can I do here now? I didn't know, you know what this is like. I've gone from silence to now people want to talk, and I'm like, right, okay, where do I go with all this? It's like in a really small way, it's life-changing. I can't go back to wherever it was like before that book came out.
It's very special. It's like you're creating really genuine, authentic connections for people with really challenging parts of their life. Like I think for so many men, I've found that men love vulnerability, but they don't know it's a thing. And then when it's modeled to them, like you've done through your book and like you do with your show, I think men go, oh no, I do like that. I think I kind of need that.
Yeah, I think if you start with labels with men, it turns people off. If I'd have called that book a book about vulnerability, guys, I'm not reading that either. Like, oh, I don't be seen carrying this around down the bookshop. I'm all right.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, I think sometimes you've got to sweeten it. You've got to camouflage it and go, let me tell you a story.
Yeah.
And then also the first 2 chapters are about the worst time of life. It's you meet me having the panic attack. And I thought, if I don't put this at the beginning, you'll never meet that guy in the book. I'll convince myself. By the time the book's going well, I'm like, why do I want to bring that guy into it? Why? But I thought, if I don't start there,
you're not going to do it.
I'm never going to do it. And I thought, actually, that is where my story, because people always say to me, why did you give everything up? Why did you leave a #1 show to come over here and struggle for a while? And it's like, if I've never really said why. I've just gone, I just fancied a change and all that, which actually if I don't tell you if I don't take you back there, then I'm not here. And what an amazing story to tell myself and my children. You will struggle in life, but just because it's hard doesn't mean you can't get through it. Not just that, you can grow through it. And I used to hear people like Tony Robbins say all that. I was like, that's all right for you. You're a fucking enormous mega man. I mean, he's just like invincible. That guy had cancer and shouted it out of his body. I'm not sure technically that's what it did, but in my mind, he had cancer and he shrunk it down. And not using normal medicine, just by yelling at himself. You got cancer. I think he got cancer out of his body within a minute. So I used to hear him talk about all this kind of stuff. I thought, I'm not you. You're superhuman, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not that. But then seeing what's happened, over the last 2 weeks, just day by day, these emails has just been, unbelievable. Life-changing.
I love that so much. I think that's really great.
Do you mind me asking a quick question?
Sorry.
I might just jump in here and
just like the dynamics here. So Josh started off as our producer. He's my younger brother, but he's far more intelligent and more insightful and better looking than I am. And so he often jumps in with
See
interviews.
How he's playing you there with those kind of platitudes.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not
What's
buying
coming?
this dynamic you've forced me into here.
So it's just a simple one, actually. Do you prefer the person you are now or before this?
Oh, now, but even though I got through it all, I found it interesting, isn't it, when I look back now, why couldn't I talk about it? And it was about 1.5 years ago, I was talking to one of my daughters who was having a tough time, and I was talking about the value in vulnerability and like, it's okay to struggle. And then she said, what do you know about it? And I said nothing. I didn't go,
Is this at a time when you were struggling with anxiety?
No. I was just like, I just didn't even want to talk about it or admit
Right.
it because I still found it hard to actually talk about it. And I hadn't talked about it. I literally got through it and then, learned some new skills through it, but never really talked about it to anyone. It was something, a dirty little secret, and that's what I turned it into. And unfortunately, with anxiety or anything hard in our lives, we're kind of hardwired to look the other way. And my advice to everyone now is actually when you look towards it, it's the resisting it. It's the not talking about it, not being kind to yourself about what you're going through, that actually gives it more power and drains you of actually your ability to actually look it and to go towards it and grow through it. I've just heard last 2 weeks, you would have done this as well, where you've heard people's stories of like really like that is horrendous, but they got themselves through it. It's like a fairy tale, but there wasn't a prince that came along and rescued them. They were the hero in their own story. And I think there's something really remarkable about that. But if it hadn't come from one of my daughters, my teenagers now, I feel like they're like these mirrors. And when she was saying, what do you know about it? It was like, oh, actually, I'm lying. I'm not being honest to you. And so I remember saying to my wife, and my wife saying, now would be a good time to tell them. And I was like, they can't handle it. And then my wife said, well, I think it's actually that I think they can, you can't. Why is that? And so I did tell them about it. And they were like, I used to think, I guess, that they needed me to be superhuman to them. And actually, when they're teenage daughters, they didn't need that dad anymore. He wasn't needed. Actually, what they need was a dad who knows what it's like to struggle. And that can actually say, I know what that's like. Here's something it might be to help you, but I can also tell you, you will get through it. Here's what happened to me. And even though you're not saying, hey, I know what it's like to be you, I don't. But they can't get enough of hearing real life stories where you go, it looked like it was over for me, and then it wasn't. And here's why it wasn't. And here's what you might be able to take into your life and make that true for you. Those stories of people overcoming, that's why we're always addicted to those stories in the movies as well. They're myths, aren't they? But then when they become true in your own life, we're making them still true. Those ancient myths have so many. We learn about ourselves through our stories that we share. But if you're not sharing a story, and I didn't, then you're not. I don't think you're also not. You're not benefiting from the actual healing power in it for yourself.
I'm fascinated in. Sorry, did you want to?
No, keep going.
Okay.
That was a beautiful answer.
Yeah.
Oh,
What a development in your. That's an incredible insight, by the way. That thing about the change of what role a father plays.
That wasn't an easy one for me, and that's a
Very
day by
profound.
day. Yeah, it has been, and it's a day by day one still now. I still sometimes go into a bedroom, and being a dad to teenage daughters is like a firefighter. You don't quite know what's the other side of that door. Right? It's the scariest thing sometimes. One, they go, get out. And even if you just peek your head around the door, the amount of times I'm trying to have a conversation through can I just open the door this way? Can I just, hey, I've got some chocolate biscuits. I want chocolate biscuits. And that's a day by day thing for me to course correct where I'm going to get it wrong, but at least I'm a lot quicker now going, they didn't want me to try and come up with all these amazing, very clever solutions. Tell you what they want to do is just shut up and make people feel seen and heard. That's why I've written a book about it. It's that what was needed. What was really hard though, suddenly as your dad, you're a dad to teenagers, and all the things that worked as dad don't work anymore. And I can only liken it to, like, say you're doing this job and it changes and your whole job description has been rewritten overnight and no one told you about it, right? I've always done it like this. I don't know what that is. It doesn't matter. This is what it is now. So you're either fired and you will either become you'll have a smaller, I guess, dialogue with your kids. Whereas actually you need to learn some new skills, and the biggest one is vulnerability. That will always transform any relationship a parent has, because actually the most important thing you need with teenagers, connection, because they don't even know how to talk about it themselves. They're lost at times. It's so scary being a teenager, and it is harder now on modern teenagers with everything they're going through with
Absolutely.
how to go there. Well, we struggle as adults, okay? They're meant to what? Fumble their way through it, through what? Osmosis. Mum and Dad aren't getting it right. It's all right with me to say, get off your phones, and I look at my phone usage for a week, and I'm horrified. I'm like, do I work for this phone? It's like a 9-to-5 job. It does feel like that, don't you? When it gets down to like 50%, it's all right, phone, I'm going to look after you, I'll get you some energy.
Yeah.
Oxygen levels are getting low.
Someone as so popular as you, like you have such a huge listenership here, moving to a new country, did you ever feel lonely at all? Did you have...
Oh God, yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Even though you're adored by like people you don't
You're
know,
not
I guess.
adored, right? You know, even I can't agree with that. I'll have to believe that. You're not adored. People dip into you on the radio. It's ephemeral, and I always accept that. It's not healthy for me to think I'm adored. You turn me into a monster, and we don't need me as a monster, okay? Adored, very kind thing to say, but no, they're not worshipping the ground. Oh, hang on, kids, silence, he's speaking again. You noise a lot of the time, and then occasionally you might grab them with something that actually... it might touch a part of them, whether that's making them laugh or something joyous or a funny story, and that's what I really love my job is I love sharing stories. And actually sometimes there's a story we all have in us that you're actually scared to tell anyone. And I told my story, and I'm still now learning 7 years later the wisdom of what happened to me by sharing my story. But yeah, to answer your question, when I moved here, it was one of the most things. I suddenly got to Friday night when I would get my phone out and go, oh my God, this has been a tough week at work. Let me just call my mate Dave and we'll go for a beer or two. So I was, hang on a minute, I don't have a Dave. In fact, I don't have any friends here. I've got no listeners, no mates. And my wife is making friends really easily. She'd go for a dog walk, come back with 3 new phone numbers. Women are always recruiting for that sisterhood. Men are, especially in your mid-40s, you're tired, you're stretched, you don't have a lot of time to see your own friends, let alone start dating some new English guy. And so it was really hard. I was actually really lonely. And I remember once my wife and I shared a hairdresser, and I got to know him. We always got on really well. And one day he texted me saying, hey, I'm going out tonight with a couple of mates for some beers. Why don't you come along? And I remember after 2 of the beers, I was having such a nice time. I said to him, hey, thanks for inviting me. And he went, it's okay, your wife said that you were lonely. And I remember going to the toilet and ringing my wife, going, why do you say this? She goes, but you are. Oh, yeah, but I haven't told you before about saying the truth.
Your wife
To another guy? Don't say that. So, yeah, there were a lot of low points. There was another moment where my wife and I were in an Uber together, and I was getting on really well with the guy. He was Canadian. He just moved to Melbourne a couple of years before me.
Oh, the Uber driver.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And this story is the lowest point of my life, right? My wife is texting me in the car going, ask him for his number. And I'm texting him back going, I can't. He's an Uber driver. It's really odd. And he knows that I'm on the radio here. It's creepy. And then she goes, again, you are lonely. You have no friends. Ask him. So we pull up outside the house. And my wife does that head move. And I ask him for his number. So I wait for her to get out. And I go, hey. You know what? This is just awful, this story. I go, hey, it'd be really nice if you and I, met up, had a pizza or beer together. And he looked really confused, like, what is happening? And I went, so, let's swap numbers. And he sort of went, okay. And then I already knew this is horrible. This is horrible. He gets, we swapped numbers. And then I texted him about 3 hours later. I waited. Well, I don't want to appear too keen. And I said, hey, I really trying to play it cool, okay?
Same night though. Same night.
Same night though, yeah. I said, hey, still buzzing from earlier. Really loved our chat,
Is your shift over?
What time do you finish, huh? Say a guy like you and a guy like me. And I said, let's meet up. When's good? And I, to this day, 2.5 years later, haven't replied. He hasn't replied.
It's just like you're still waiting.
Still waiting. Part of me would always be waiting you. So I'm glad you find that funny, my pain there. But yeah, I'm glad to say I have got some friends.
But that's it. Like, did you reach out to your friends in the UK
Nope.
to say I'm struggling at the moment?
No, because I still wanted them to think I was doing really well over it. I didn't want it to go. Just a quick update. My wife's organising play dates for me, and an Uber driver didn't want to go out for a drink with me. Other than that, I've made a really great call moving out. Oh, and by the way, the listeners hate me. Other than that, I'm kicking goals.
Would you, knowing what you know now, 3 years later, in that situation again, would you reach out to them and say that exact 3 things?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, God.
Because it's connecting, isn't it? Like,
yeah. And again, it's that silence is just... that sadness. It's closing your heart to you and the world, and that's not living. That
Yeah.
isn't living.
Yeah, totally. One of the things I noticed with your book is that you write down a lot of stuff. You write down when someone says something
Yes.
hurtful or negative about you, you write it down.
I should just say, you make me sound like a psycho. It's like, putting together some kind of hit list. I have to write things down to talk about on the radio.
For content, right? Yeah.
And ideas. Otherwise, you'll forget it. And so, I'm constantly getting my phone out and writing down things in my notes. I have to write it all down.
Yeah, and you've received some pretty harsh criticism. People saying that you wouldn't last 6 months here, or you won't be around in a year or whatever. Do you find that? Is it motivating? Does it hurt? How does it sit with you?
Used the right way, it can be motivating. I remember there was a rival radio boss here who, after my first couple of shows, gathered everyone in the boardroom and told all the people they mustn't worry about me. It was unlikely that I was going to last 6 months, and someone in that boardroom told me, and they were like really apologetic, and I was so excited.
Oh, really?
Oh, if you've seen Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, when he goes, that someone said this, and he goes, I took it personally. Then it cuts to him. I wasn't doing what Michael Jordan did, but I changed the name of our show WhatsApp group immediately to The Unlikelies, and it became an outsider motivating force. I used it. It was brilliant. Yes, sometimes you use it the right way. There's an energy to it. Yeah, definitely. Oh, I loved it.
So it didn't hurt at all when you heard that?
Oh, no, not in that regard, no, because it was like, maybe. I was just like, maybe I'm not here in 6 months' time, or maybe I am. I don't know. But I'm willing to live in a world of maybe. That I can stay there. And so, but other times, you're doing the show, you've got an ego to do what I do. And someone emails in, saying no one invited you here. Oh, I'm sorry, but you that is on some level going to, sell them in the school playground. And I mean, the book is called No One Listens to Your Dad's Show, and that came from something that was said to one of my daughters in the school playground the first couple of months. My daughter thought it was hilarious, but I remember being utterly crushed. Like, I'm being bullied on air and now in school playgrounds. This is awful. And I was like, however, I did write it down on my phone. I was like, if I get through this, that is what I'm going to call the book. And so I'm owning that sledge, because it's a very funny thing to say to someone whose dad's on the radio. No one listens to your dad's show.
And so she was genuinely fine with it, your daughter? Wow.
Of course you are, dear. Your kids, no matter what your dad's done, is someone taking the mickey out of your dad. Don't you just love that? There's no such thing as a cool dad. They all just think we're idiots.
Can I ask about your mental health now?
Yeah.
Doing the show now here in Australia.
Of course.
Do you have those panic attacks or anxiety still, or is that?
I think anxiety is going to be something which is always going to be around for a while. Yeah. But what I am better at, and through learning various techniques, and there are techniques that you can learn, is that they kind of start to rise up, and I'm better now at dealing with them there rather than when it's become like shit's about to get real. I've become better at that, reading the signs. Sometimes it might even be stuff where I'm very tired today, so this is kind of like I just need to look after myself. And there's other areas where you might be in a stressful, overwhelming situation. There's too much going on. You go, just take yourself off for a minute and go and do some basic breathing exercises. Helps bring you back to just get you some space, some inner space in you. So yeah, and when I'm not looking after myself day to day, I'm someone, I think like we all do, I need daily habits and rituals. And when I ignore those for a while, a couple of weeks, I can almost feel like the early rumblings of anxiety coming up. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not looking after myself. And now I see it not as like, dun, 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 it's back to get you. It's like, it's more like an early warning sign going, hey, it's that part of me again. You're not looking after yourself. And
so what does that look like for you, looking after yourself? What do you do? What are the things that you do?
Daily breath work. Never thought I'd be saying that. Become a big advocate of breath work, okay? And I've tried to meditate. I've had some amazing, I can't sit and have no thoughts, okay? I've given up, felt bad about it. And even I met this guy, you guys love this, right, years ago, called Andy Puddicombe. Andy Puddicombe is one of the world's most successful meditators and teachers. He's an amazing, lovely guy. He is Headspace.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's the world's biggest, and he teaches everybody. He one-on-one tried to teach me, and I just couldn't. But I went on coming out of the panic attacks. Someone told me about breath work, and so I wanted to find out more. And so I went on a week-long breath work retreat. And my kids thought I was having an affair. They were like, "What do you mean you're going away to learn how to breathe? If you're not breathing, you're dead." And they had a good point. I remember even my wife pulling me aside, like, "Is there anything I need to know?" It's like, I'm going on a breath work retreat, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. It was like, I think for some men, it's a way of doing meditation and they've got a focus, and you have these different breathing techniques. I don't mean like suddenly I'm Russell Brand in a bathrobe, or Wim Hof, naked, in Iceland going, in wizzy breath, out wizzy breath. Although I do some of the breathing techniques Wim does do, and they are amazing for anxiety. They've helped me more than anything else. Along with counselling, breath work is free. I've become such a big fan of it. I've just enrolled on a teacher training course, right? No idea where this is going. That will take about the next 6 months to actually become a qualified teacher of breathwork. I don't know what I then do with it. No idea. But I know that there's because people keep telling me now, what did you do? And I keep saying breathwork. People are like, huh? You can't. They just think you're some kind of mystic. And I'm not one of those. I'm a very sort of practical side. If I just do this for 5 minutes twice a day, I know I have a better day.
Yeah.
And so I want to teach it. Don't know how I'm going to do that yet or where that will be, but because my wife is like, "So what? You're going to do that on like a Friday afternoon?" It's like, it's strange. You finished a radio show, and we're going to start seeing clients in a shed or something. I went, I don't know. Maybe I don't know, but I just think that people want to know now. And I'd love to be able to show them or go, and this is what it is. It's as easy as this, and it can really help. It doesn't mean it's going to make it all go away, but it can really make a difference to me. It definitely makes it. I also know when I do regular exercise, I just have more resilience that way. Yeah,
Totally. You,
breathwork's incredible. I've done a little bit. I had a panic attack. I guess I was about 25.
Yeah,
everything you've said.
Yeah,
such a physical thing. I was very, very lucky to get into a psychologist quite quickly, and she taught me a breathing exercise thing. It was really life-changing to be given that tool, because I don't think anxiety's never been a big thing for me. It was just a point in my life when it reared its head, but to know that you've got that sort of weapon in your back pocket to have when they're coming, or to know, it just gives you that sense of security or something. But that was not what was going to be my question. My question was around the anxiety attacks and the anxiety, and I was really fascinated the way that you phrased it before when you were talking about your parents and how they only found out 2 days ago, and the way that you said, "It's okay, it's all better now," or words to that effect. I'm not sure if they are the exact words.
Yeah, it was roughly that.
Yeah, and I guess my question is the reason you took so long to tell them, and sorry if this is too much of a personal question.
No, not at all.
But do you think it was trying to protect them, or was it something else that you were trying to do without telling them for so long until it felt better, so to speak?
That's a great question, actually, and I hadn't really thought about that. I think it's probably two parts. One, I want to protect them, and if I'm really honest, probably wanted to protect myself and not, I guess, appear to mum and dad as a weak child or sensitive child, and as a teenager I was, and growing up in the 80s, being a sensitive teenager was not an option. It was like, well, I'll just suck that part of me down and blow up one day by a bin, which is what happened to me. And so I think it was, I wasn't sure how to be vulnerable in front of them. I was actually really scared. If I start talking about it, I'll start crying and it will make me feel that I'm weak. And so what was lovely, what happened literally the last 24 hours was that wasn't how I felt. I felt like I felt like a child again, but not, if that makes any sense. I still had that sort of, I'm always going to be their son. And I felt like because they could express their love for me, and without me going, I'm okay now, I could go, God, it was really hard. God, it was so hard. And for them to go, oh my God, I didn't know. And I think it was a really, I don't know, there was a lot going on in that I haven't quite really come to terms with yet. It was lovely. It was really nice.
It's so fresh. 24 hours. Jeez.
Yeah.
You're right in it.
Yeah, and also I think there were two things going on. I felt like the adult me, and also some part of our relationship that I thought I couldn't show them the vulnerable teenage part of me anymore. It didn't feel safe to. Not because they were saying, don't be vulnerable anymore. It's just what I was learning around me. I learned, like a lot of teenage boys and girls, that emotions, you've got to be very careful who you share them with. And there's a protective part of us that has to get us through that. And sometimes that protective part, that shell you built up to get you through a tough time, it doesn't suit you anymore, and it's actually that shell's keeping you small. It's keeping you from growing, and it's hurting you, it's suffocating you, and it's like how breaking through that is really hard, but that is life changing.
Yeah, totally.
That's a fascinating analogy. That idea of when you're getting older, you put up the barriers when you're a teenager, and some of them are probably healthy because teenagers can be real assholes.
Yeah.
And then as you become an adult, sort of taking the armaments down in a healthy way is part of becoming an adult almost.
Do you know what? I think, Josh, you've nailed that. Exactly what is being a grown-up. It's like a lot of us have built walls up that we don't even know there were walls there, but you'll feel like you can't connect with your partners, with your children because of what's there. And then it's only through sometimes some things happening bad that can then be transformative, where you realise where those walls are, or even where you're holding yourself tight and realise, oh my God, how long have I been doing that? Oh, actually, since you were a teenager. And it's like, I was always fascinated by that. There was a story about how they found some Japanese guy like 30 years after the war, right? And they went, hey, the war's over. You can put down the guns now. And I think sometimes that's what it's like. It's an inner war that you didn't even know that you were raging. You were keeping people away from a part of yourself that you had to actually protect when you were a teenager to survive, because it is really hard at times. And there's parts of you that actually aren't ready to be shared with the world. It's not quite safe. The people around you don't know how to handle that, and you don't know how to handle it. That will come later on. And so I think it's exactly that, mate. It's exactly taking those down and realising you don't need that wall anymore. It's not about keeping people out. It's also keeping you in. And that's what the real pain is, I guess.
The other thing that struck me was you talking quite a lot earlier about men and the way men deal with these things. And I'm interested to know, did you talk to your mates in England about it? Because I don't think we really delved into that. Have you mentioned it to your mates? Are they finding out through the book?
They found out a couple of weeks ago. One of my best friends, and he was like, I had no idea. And I went, it's not your fault. I could have picked the phone up at any time. I think for a man, I hate saying for a man, I can only talk about me, right? In my experience, okay? But in my experience, I think sometimes men, our biggest fear is loss of control, of crying in front of another man. It feels like a death, and that they're going to go, oh my God, what is he doing? This is fucked. He's made it weird. He's made it weird, right? And so you'll do anything to do that, right? And you say, oh, sorry, I'm getting a bit emotional here. Let me just get some beers in. Oh, God, sorry for these emotions. And so, if I'm being honest, it was that. I was like, if I start talking about this, I might start crying. Well, none of us are going to need that. So let's not talk about this ever, And so what was nice is when we did talk about it, it was actually lovely. Again, you have this connection with why you have some friends that stay with you over time. And when I was talking about it, then he was opening up about a tough time in his life. And now we're better friends because of it. And that's really special. Yeah, that's amazing.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Some really important messages in this chat. I'm so grateful that you've given up your time for this, because I feel like, and not just men, I think everyone listening, there's so much important stuff in there. So thank you so much. The book is called Nobody Listens to Your Dad's Show. I absolutely loved it. It's a really,
thank you.
Well, I think what I loved about it was that it's really important messages, but it's also punctuated with a whole lot of humor. And I think that's what makes it really accessible to people, that it's not, they're heavy parts, but it's also very funny as well.
Yeah, please don't anyone thinking it's one of these sort of misery fests that my wife seeks out and loves, where she's always crying when she's reading. It isn't that, because actually, I think that actually there's something really nice when you can go, let me tell you a story, and it was so bad. But you can also then, looking back, go, you can honour what happened, but also bring humour to it. I think there's a release and people know what you're really doing. But I still think that humour is one of the best coping mechanisms we have.
100%.
because Life
100%.
is really hard. It just is sometimes. It's really hard. And it doesn't mean, it didn't work for me at times, right? And that's someone who's professionally funny and at home as well. There were times when being funny about it was a defense mechanism that actually wasn't working anymore. But in terms of sharing a story and putting some jokes in there, that's really important. I don't want to just make everyone miserable for a couple of hours they're going to spend with the book. I think that was rude. But while you're here, I'm going to make it up. I'm also going to tell you a story. And I think, the comedy that moves me, the movies that move me. I remember the first time I heard my daughter in school playing, she was singing, she had the solo of Miley Cyrus, The Climb. And I actually remember, I can't stop crying. And people were looking round. Even my wife was like, hey, we're all for the sensitive, but what is going on? And I was like, I don't know. Right? And there was actually snot coming up my nose. And there was an elderly lady sat next to me, someone's nan, who was like, they've always got tissues in their handbag, right? Going, basically help clean me up. And I remember afterwards being so appalled at this display of emotion because it was Miley Cyrus's The Climb, but my daughter was doing it. But there's something sometimes when, for guys, don't you feel sometimes when you do allow yourself a little cry? I think there should be a weekly. I think there's a men's group called Guys Get Your Cry On, where find something for 5 minutes and just cry at it because you always feel better. I think in that moment I was crying for the times that I couldn't cry. And it happened once when I went to see Paddington Bear 2. Honestly, again, sobbing, right? No one else in the cinema was sobbing, right? I don't know what's happening right now, but I'll just stay with it. My kid's pointing and laughing at me, but I was like, I couldn't suck it in anymore. I couldn't push it down into the hurt locker. I remember when I got home, going to have a lie down, right? And I could hear my wife coming and going, where's your dad? I went, he's upstairs. He's had none of his moments at Paddington Bear 2. Guys, get your cry on.
It's a lovely point to finish on. Christian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you guys, I loved it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Can I be a fascination moment? 'Cause you hold the feeling in the room. But you want the beat, I need the tune. Hoping the pieces, they just falling. Stared at your door, I felt that coolness. Like I'm a ghost inside the room. And I never called it wrong. 'Cause I don't wanna be alone.
Isn't there there's something about some people's voices are just made for radio.
Thanks.
Josh, you've had your moment.
Yeah, sorry, it's going to my head.
You're just on a high from just destroying the back end of that interview.
Yeah. No, Christian, first of all, guys, that was just such an interesting interview. Like he was great, but I feel like the questions you guys asked were really, really good. I thought, I feel like a lot of the start bit was like probably stuff he talked about before. And then later on in the interview, it was
When Josh started asking.
No.
Oh.
No, you both of you both did a great job. Both did really well. But no, he's just got that voice, doesn't he, Christian? He's just got that radio voice.
He does. And anytime a man is willing to open up like that,
Oh yeah.
it's huge.
Yep.
Because so many people around the world experiencing anxiety, and so many of those people experience the panic attacks. But I don't feel like we hear people talk about panic attacks too often. I mean, you spoke, Josh, about yours, and I reckon that's the second time I've heard you talk about that. So it's not something where willing people are, and understandably so, but it's just, I think it's nice to be reminded that if you're going through this, you are not alone. It's common.
Can I mean, because Christian kind of went into what it feels like to have a panic attack. I've never had one. Josh, do you remember, would you feel comfortable, step by step? I don't know how helpful this necessarily is, but if people have maybe felt similar things and don't know what it is.
Well, I actually asked Penny about this morning because Penny, with her anxiety, used to experience a lot of panic attacks, and I wanted to check in with her and she said, I think it'll be helpful for people. A lot of people won't know what it is that's happening to them. They might think it's like asthma, or they might think So she said it would be very helpful to know that it's a panic attack.
Yeah. It happened such a long time ago. It was nearly, I think it must have been 10 years ago. So it's a little bit fuzzy, but some of the acute moments of it, I don't think I'll ever forget. I remember it was the middle of the day, and I don't know why I was having a shower, but I think maybe I was starting to feel I was pretty down. I was pretty depressed. I wasn't in a good place. And maybe I think I might have just gone to have a shower as something that feels nice, something to try and lift my mood.
Yeah.
And I remember being in the shower and having like just a cycle of, my mind was on this sort of cycle of pretty negative thoughts about myself and my future, and just like a lot of all the negative things you could think of about yourself, really bad internal voice. And the thoughts were getting worse, and it was kind of like getting sucked into a thing on it. What is on water?
A spiral or like a...
Yeah, you know when you see in a...
Oh, like a vortex.
Like a vortex on
Like
the water.
At Wet and Wild.
Kind of thing.
Like the vortex at Wet and Wild, yeah.
Exactly.
I think everyone can relate to that.
Common analogy.
Yep.
So it was kind of like felt getting a bit like getting sucked down into a vortex. And I remember my breath, my sort of heart racing, my breath getting a lot shorter, and that started to actually feel like incredible sort of tightness and pressure across my chest. And then I remember starting to go sort of faint, and everything kind of going white, and that, that tingling thing you get when you're about to faint.
Yeah.
I remember that happening, and as that was happening, the heart rate rising heaps, and then the panic starts to happen because you're panicking about what's going on. So imagine just that fear and panic. And something I really specifically remember the most is kind of losing feeling in my arms and the tips of my fingers getting really tingly.
Wow.
Like really, like I'd been sitting on my arms
Like pins and needles.
Yeah. And all the blood, maybe the blood was rushing away from my arms. I don't know. And I remember my extremities going numb and not really being, almost like cramping, and not really being able to do anything with my arms, and collapsing in the shower, and no one else was home. And I remember crawling out of the shower because I couldn't stand up because I was just it's like I had no strength in my legs. We had a golden retriever at the time, and the golden retriever like came into the room and like lay next to me. And I remember just hugging our golden retriever for about 20 minutes. And like I was bawling and crying and couldn't work out what was going on.
Oh my God.
Did you know this might be a panic? Like, did you know panic attacks were a thing, or
I knew.
How old were you?
I reckon I was about 24,
Oh, yeah.
25. I have a feeling. I think it must have been after I came back. Me and my now wife Sophie, girlfriend at the time, we went to Bangladesh for a year, and I have a feeling it was soon after coming back from Bangladesh. So that would make it 2012. So yeah, 25, 26. And I remember kind of knowing that it wasn't a heart attack or anything like that. I remember feeling this is something I've caused this through thinking. Like I could tell that it wasn't. I was terrified, but I was terrified because it just felt like it had come from pure, because it was a clear negative thought process that got me there.
You could sort of sense that it was like a domino effect, and you could remember the source of it.
Yeah, that it was from this cycle of thinking. I remember calling Mum, and she came home from work to look after me. And by this stage, I'd sort of managed to get some clothes on, but I was still on the ground, hugging the dog, basically. And I think I told you, and you must have known Maria at the time already, because you called Maria, who is my psychologist now. And I managed to get into her either that day or the next day. I can't remember. It was really soon. Could have even been later that day, which was amazing of her to let me in to see her. And I went along to her and told her everything that had happened. And she's, as you know, Ryan, because you see her as well, she's the most amazing person ever. But she told me, I can't remember if these were her words, but she was almost like, the great news is that, I think I sort of said this in the podcast, but she said the great thing about this is that they're preventable and curable. You just need to know this breathing technique, which I haven't had to use. I've only ever had one more in my life, and I've only ever had to use this technique once or twice. But from memory, it was, which I think there must be a myriad of breathing techniques. As Christian was saying, he's going to learn more, and I can imagine that there are heaps. But this one was really simple. It was basically you pick a number, say 5 or 6 or whatever, and breathe in, counting slowly to 5. And then once you've breathed in, then you breathe out, adding one more number. So you breathe out in 6, or you breathe in for 7, breathe out for 8.
And you keep going up number
I can't remember. Yeah, maybe you go up
until
to
you
a
get to
certain
like
amount.
1,000.
Yeah.
there probably is a lower number that you stop at. God, she didn't give me the tip on when to stop.
Yeah. Or where to start.
10,000.
I'm going to start at number 60. No, yeah, and I think it was probably, maybe it was starting at 1 and going up to 12 and then back down again or something like that, like a pyramid.
Yeah.
That sounds right, actually. But I remember the key being, and when you do it, if you breathe in, and I have used it just when I'm a bit stressed or I feel like I'm not in the moment. And this sort of leads into meditation, which I've tried for many years as well. Sort of intermittently been good, and other times I haven't done it in ages. But once you've sort of experienced what controlling your breathing can do, it feels like a bit of a superpower in situations where you start to get a bit, you're not present or you're feeling stressed, just to take a moment to breathe in for 4, out for 5, in for 5, out for 6, in for 6, out for 7, and do that for 30 or 40 seconds. It changes everything. Your whole mind slows down. Everything comes back to normal. And it's like this, feels like a superpower to be able to control what seemed to be completely uncontrollable, this peak of, because when you're going through a panic attack, from what I understand, it's adrenaline spiking as you panic, and the cortisol is trying to counteract the adrenaline. And so the two chemicals are just coming into your system at an alarming rate, and it's that increase in those chemicals in your system that cause all those physical symptoms. And now it's all coming back to you now. There's the breathing thing, and then there's exercise and water are the 3 ways to get those chemicals out of your system once they're in there.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's what I remember from it.
Wow, thanks, Josh. That is terrifying. I
was
find,
scary, yeah.
I mean, the dog coming up to you, I feel like I hear a lot of stories like that about dogs having this like instinct that you're in trouble. It's like the dog knew that you were in trouble and like, needed comfort or something.
And it was the most comforting thing ever. As you know, as everyone knows, golden retrievers are just lovely, adorable dogs. But
yeah,
I just needed something to know I wasn't alone in that moment. And it was like this dog just knew
Incredible.
that I needed something. Yeah.
Is that Harry?
Must have been, yeah.
Yeah. Gosh. I mean, actually, Vance joked about Vance before, but Elsie fell and hit her head on the side of the table the other day, and she was crying so much, and Vance walked all the way down the hallway and he just came and sat, like, because I didn't know what had happened. I came running out and Vance was just sitting at her feet, like he was just there with her. They're incredible.
Yeah.
Like,
Dogs are amazing.
Yeah. So I guess what you're talking about is mindfulness, is what some people would call mindfulness as well.
I think it's certainly linked to it. I don't know enough about that. I'm sure there are experts out there that would say, no, this is, would have delineation between the two, but I think they're surely linked. It has to be.
Yeah. Well, mindfulness to me has always been just the ability to properly be wherever you are. And, Ben Crow spoke in the episode about when we think about the future and the past, we don't have control over those things, and that makes us anxious. When we're trying to control stuff we can't control, but when the only thing you can ever control in your life is what is happening right now. That's the only thing we ever have control over. And I feel like when what you're trying to control is your breathing, something that's happening right now, that's a really nice example of, I don't know, that's just sort of my take on it.
Well, it's like, I mean, the very simple version of it is basically every morning I do like one of the 10-minute guided meditations I use Calm, the app Calm. And every single morning, like it sort of varies from day to day on what they talk about and the different techniques, but every single day it's breathing. And I guess the breathing it's centering you or making you focus on the present. But what it also does is if you're focusing on like the air going in your nose and out your mouth or whatever you're doing, then ideally you're not thinking about what you're doing that afternoon or that morning or what happened yesterday. That's
And I think and to link it to mindfulness, from what also I understand, and I'm not an expert, but the the point is not to be a victim of the emotions that happen to appear in your mind at a certain time. And
Or the thoughts that appear.
Thoughts.
Yeah.
And then the emotions that are attached to those
Yeah.
thoughts.
Because that also then dictates your behaviors and your actions. It's like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think breathing is a great way to begin getting control over the moment and learn how to just accept those thoughts and emotions rather than be carried away from them. That's my very, very limited basic, understanding.
No, it's thank you so much for sharing that, because we didn't plan to do that. You didn't plan to share that with us.
Yeah,
so thank you.
Put you on the spot.
Oh, no worries.
But I think so many people will have experienced that and be going, yeah, I know exactly what that feels like. And that's a really good description of it. Or mine's a little bit different, but at least I'm hoping there are people who listen to this who are hearing it going, fuck, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. I never knew what that was that happened to me. It's
good. And it's good to hear something that is preventable and curable.
Yeah, I was just
like, that's good.
Yeah, to go from that absolute panic that day and then to hear that later in the day, it meant everything.
Must have been top of the list of things you wanted to hear.
Exactly. Yeah, number one.
Yeah. Give me some good news, Maria. Come on.
It was, and also I think for anyone who's experienced them and hasn't sought help and is, I think it's good to know that, like, as I've only had a couple of them, but it hasn't. I almost feel like I've learnt more about myself and about the world by having them, and now knowing that I can avoid having them in the future. It's not a thing on my radar that I ever worry about or think about.
Yeah. Right. Thank you for that.
Mm.
Well, one of us has recently been asked to go on a mindfulness app.
Yeah.
Which I love this so much. And I wonder, Josh, you haven't heard this?
No.
So Ryan got in touch with me a little while ago and said, I've been invited to be a guest, to provide guest meditations on an app. And maybe a bit like with you being like, why is Hugh on Philosophy? That's my, like, I'm going, why is Ryan doing meditation?
Yeah.
Well, when I heard what the brief was for it, it makes total sense. So the app is called Laughscape.
Yeah, Laughscape. Yeah, it's a friend of mine called Max and his partner Leah. They created this app called Laughscape, and it came from he had this idea because he years ago had trouble sleeping. He couldn't fall asleep. He'd have thoughts running through his head, and he'd just be up like really late. And he tried all the meditation apps and the sleeping apps to try and calm himself, but they didn't work. The thing that he found really helped him the most was listening to the old Ricky Gervais podcast with Carl Pilkington and Steve. And he found that he was like laughing, but he found that calmed him enough to be able to sleep, like laughing. So he was like, well, that's surely something. Other people that might help. So he had this idea to create a sleep app, with sleep stories, but instead of them being just like very serious and calm, and he thought, I'm going to get comedians to come on and just tell funny stories, but in a sort of calming voice with calming music. So he asked me to come do a few. So I did a couple, and said, yeah, you've got a clip, haven't you?
And yeah, so this is a great. I mean, if you have trouble sleeping,
amazing idea.
Highly recommend this. But I don't use it for that. I when I'm walking the dog, I listen to different. It's just I don't fall asleep walking the dog. I thoroughly enjoy them.
Oh, it is such a good. I love this app. It's so good. I don't get any. I'm not a part of it at all. I just did like a couple of these things, but it's awesome. And
Yeah.
a few people I know now are using it.
So Josh, I'm just going to press play on a part of. This is Ryan's meditation. Here it is.
I'm here to help you to stop being awake. Just for a while. Until morning. So, whether you're lying down or lying on your side or on your back, or maybe you're just lying to yourself. In which case, hopefully that stops. But now, let's try and get to sleep.
So yeah, so that's like the thank you, Hugh. That's like the intro, but it goes on. Which one is that one? That's the title of that one?
That's not the one where you read or your favourite. You talk us through your furniture list. This is Ryan bores you to sleep. Listening his favourite.
Yeah, it's like so I go on to like list like my favorite items in the household. So the intention is that it's like a silly story, and there's like 50 different comedians on the app who do different things, and there's heaps of great. It's really funny. So anyway, I didn't mean to go on and on about Laughscape, but it is great, and Max is a great guy. So.
Yeah, I could not bring it up when we were talking about mindfulness. That we have a mindfulness expert in the room.
We do.
Wow. Thank you.
A guru.
Yeah. I probably shouldn't do an Academy of Imperfection with me as the guest. Nah. I'll think about it. Sleep on it. All right. Well, thanks, Christian O'Connell.
Yeah.
For coming. His book is called No One Listens to Your Dad's Show.
Yeah.
I'm almost finished it. It's so good. So interesting.
Yeah, it's great. And I feel like also, thank you, Josh. Again, you've come on this podcast at first to help us with the technical stuff, and now you just...
I'm running out of stories and anecdotes and things to say, so that could be it for me.
Yeah, just start making them up.
Start lying to yourself.
Josh, our secret weapon.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as we did. I think that was just a very helpful and raw and honest chat from Christian and Josh. So thanks very much, everyone.
See you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
You said the cold couldn't burn. Can I be a fascination moment? 'Cause you hold the feeling in the room. But you want the beat.
Hugh, it's Ryan. That was just awesome. Love Christian O'Connell. Good to see you guys. I forgot to tell you though, I'm not sure if you've watched it, but on Netflix there's something I think you would love. It's from a comedian called Bo Burnham, and it's his new stand-up special, or sort of a stand-up special. It's called Inside. He made it last year, and it was so inspiring to me, and I reckon you'll love it. And there are some like kind of really interesting like mental health themes in it. And anyway, I meant to mention it to you, but if you want to see it, it's on Netflix. So just go to www.netflix.com/watch/812894883 TRACKID equals 13752289 ampersand TCTX equals 0%2C0%2. So actually, I'll just text it to you. Yeah, I'll just text it to you. Okay, that's going to be quicker. Okay, it's Ryan, by the way, Shelton from the podcast.
To call back, press 22
Can
to
I be a
replay
fascination
message.
moment? 'Cause you hold the feeling in the room. But you want the beat, I need the chill. Holding the pieces that just falling. Stay that you don't have to be cool.
If this episode has triggered anything for you around mental health, we strongly recommend Lifeline on 131114. The Imperfects is brought to you by the Resilience Project, produced by Ryan Shelton, Josh and Hugh Van Kylenberg. A very special thank you also to No Mono for allowing us to use their track Keep On as the theme for this podcast.
Like you were never there at all. Just leave me down here.